The crucifixion of Jesus Christ is one of the most important events in human history. Many have tried to prove or deny its historicity, and many more have attempted to investigate the theological truth behind his subsequent resurrection, as those events stand in the essence of the faith of 1/3 of the world's current population. The events commemorated during Easter took place in a specific historical setting, the early 1st century Judea. Almost everyone is familiar with the Apostles, Holy Mary, and the Last Supper. However, when trying to actually untangle the events, it is easy to find ourselves in confusion. As within the Gospels, besides Christ's message for love and compassion, we get exposed to places, people, and events of the era, providing crucial context. Yet the broader contextual information of that world is usually omitted in the Gospels, as everyone reading it at the time would be familiar with it. First example amongst this information are references to the temple. In other instances, we can read Jesus accusing the so-called Pharisees and the scribes. We also read about the mysterious Sadducees. Additionally, more information is presented on a political level. In Luke's Gospel, when Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, learns that Jesus is from Galilee, he sends him to Herod Antipas, who is in Jerusalem at the time. Why is that the case? Is it the same Herod trying to murder Jesus as an infant, as per the story of Christmas? The answers to these and many more questions are the ones that we'll attempt to provide today. But our analysis will not stop there. Through this information, we'll try to explain the real revolutionary depth and importance of the words of Jesus Christ as they are attested in the Bible in shaping Western civilization and even humanity's modern moral standards. The Jewish people established a kingdom of Israel that probably existed between 1047 and 930 BC based on traditional estimates. According to the legend, King David ruled a prosperous state that was inherited by his son Solomon, who is famed for constructing the first temple. The Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem went on to become the main center of Jewish religion for the next centuries. However, slowly the power of the kingdom diminished, and the realm was divided into the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. This split initiated an era of foreign conquests, with the Neo-Assyrians taking control over the kingdom of Israel, also referred to as Samaria in 722 BC. And the Neo-Babylonian sack of Jerusalem in 587 BC, resulting in the end of the kingdom of Judah. The brutal siege of Jerusalem led to the sack of the temple by the king Nabuchodonosor II, who also ordered the famous Babylonian exile, during which a big part of the Jewish higher class was exiled to Babylon, the capital of this new empire, a place where the Neo-Babylonians gathered exiles from all around their vast domains to create the most impressive city of the era. This exile would last about 40 years until the Achaemenid Empire under Cyrus the Great overran the Babylonians and the land of the Old Israel along with it. This new empire, known for its tolerance, would allow for the reconstruction of the Temple of Solomon. This would now be known as the Second Temple. The Persian rule would last for 2 centuries, up until Alexander the Great conquered all of the Achaemenid Empire along with Judea. After his death, the region was contested between the Seleucids and the Ptolemies of Egypt. Under the new Seleucid king Antiochus IV, a forceful campaign of Hellenization took place against the Jews, creating competing factions within the community, some arguing for Hellenization and others against it. The general sentiment, however, was one of revolt, leading to the Maccabean uprising in the 170s BC, and culminating in the establishment of the independent Hasmonean Jewish kingdom in 141 BC under Shimon Hadashi. In this new kingdom, several religious and political groups emerged, with differing opinions on divine law and the temple administration. These were the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Essenes. The Sadducees or Chedukim were directly involved in the administration of the temple, managing the rituals as well as the finances of the temple, acting in essence as priests. However, not all priests belonged to this group. The Pharisees or Perushim would usually act as teachers and scholars, as interpreters of divine law, so to speak. The Pharisees, usually in close contact with scribes around the cities of Judea, would be heavily judged by Jesus for their insistence on the legalistic approach to religious law. Those two sects, or rather factions, were usually competing against one another, with the Pharisees usually having the support of the common people, while the Sadducees would express more aristocratic views and would usually have limited power outside of Jerusalem. Despite their animosities, the Pharisees and the Sadducees would provide members to the Sanhedrin. That is, a religious council that acted as state judges that would end up presiding over the trial of Jesus. In the Bible, it is simply mentioned as Synedrion, which is council in Greek. The third group, the Essenes or Esseni, who are not mentioned in the Bible at all, would be opposed to the temple's existence and would usually live in the countryside in a manner similar to modern-day anti-Zionist Jewish groups. This Hasmonean kingdom would gradually accumulate power over the region, conquering Samaria in the north, the region of Galilee, and even Edom, a region to the south of Judea. The local Edomites would not be of Jewish faith, and thus the Hasmonean state attempted to impose Judaism on the region. Herod, the later king of Judea, the one to order the execution of infants, was an Idumean. And it is possible that either him or his family were recent converts to Judaism, and as is often the case with recent converts, he went to great lengths to prove his zealotry over the new faith. A civil war in 67 BC led to Roman intervention by Pompey the Great in the Jewish kingdom. Rome at the time had just defeated the Seleucids and easily projected her power in the eastern Mediterranean. This allowed for the Romans to appoint a puppet Hasmonean king who would be checked by a local procurator. This position was offered to a man from Edom, Antipater, Herod's father. 40 BC would prove a turbulent year, with Antipater dying and thus Herod, who was already involved in politics, losing his straight way to power. The Parthian invasion and the Roman civil war of Mark Antony against Octavian at the time gave the chance to the Hasmoneans to be established once more, ousting Antipater's family. Nevertheless, the mastermind Herod managed to gain the support of Rome and officially deposed them in 37 BC, allowing him to rule now as a Roman client king with a considerable degree of autonomy. In order to consolidate power, Herod ruled with an iron fist, establishing his own secret police, killing 3 of his sons in the process, and practicing several more acts of brutality. The one mentioned in the Bible, with the killing of the firstborn sons, probably taking place around 7 BC. Jesus must have been born around that year, and he probably fled to Egypt until the death of Herod in 4 BC. After Herod's death in 4 BC, 3 out of his 4 remaining sons inherited his kingdom in a disproportionate manner. Herod Archelaus inherited the biggest part of the kingdom, including Jerusalem, but only reigned for 10 years, from 4 BC to 6 AD. Archelaus was also a brutal ruler and was deposed by the Romans after the complaints by the local population. After his deposition, several prefects appointed directly by Rome assumed power. Coponius, Marcus Ambivulus, Annius Rufus, Valerius Gratus, and finally Pontius Pilatus. Herod Antipas, however, unlike his father, had a much more successful rule, lasting up to 39 AD. He ruled 2 unconnected parts of the former kingdom, the Perea on the east bank of the Jordan River and Galilee to the north. Galilee included many of the influential places of the life of Jesus Christ, like Nazareth, Gennesaret, and Capharnaum. It was him that gave the order of the execution of John the Baptist. The last son, Herod Philip II, was also successful, lasting until 34 AD, ruling the parts of the kingdom north of Galilee, but with no significant impact on the story of Jesus. The two sons of Herod, reigning until the 30s, did so only as Roman clients, with much lower autonomy than their father had. After the death of Herod, Joseph decided to relocate his family in Judea. However, doing so in the domains of Archelaus would be a challenge, and so he decided to move to Nazareth in Galilee in the domains of Herod Antipas. Jesus of Nazareth subsequently spent many of his early years in the Roman vassal domains of the son of Herod. Around the late 20s and early 30s, Jesus Christ, born in Bethlehem around 30 years earlier, would have been preaching around Judea and Galilee with considerable success, thanks to his message of salvation through love, in addition to his ability to perform miracles. Whether or not these miracles occurred is not the subject of this video, but what is certain is that his followers were convinced of his holy status. As word of Jesus' popularity rose throughout the region, political tensions mounted in Jerusalem. Jesus, along with his following, decided to enter the city and directly confront the local authorities that represented the old world order. The Roman government, the conservatism of the Pharisees and Jewish religious officials, coupled with a Greek culture that had largely encroached into Judea. The day of their arrival coincided with the Passover or Pascha festival, a feast held by the Jews to commemorate their exodus from Egypt during the times of Moses. In the next days, Jesus visited the temple and expelled the merchants that were residing there to maximize their profit, in an action that greatly insulted the religious hierarchy. Even though Jesus had clearly insulted the local elite, there was no clear way for them to condemn him without losing face against the crowd. His message had been appealing to the common people and projected moral values. After failing to discredit him in straight-up confrontation, they would manage to arrest him outside of the crowd's reach, something that they managed thanks to the betrayal of Judas the Iscariot. Jesus identified the betrayal of his disciple during the Last Supper, but he did not attempt to escape the trap and even ordered the rest of his disciples to not defend him. While he was praying after the iconic meal in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was identified by Judas with a kiss, and then arrested by the authorities. Jesus was then brought in front of the high priest Caiaphas and was questioned by the Sanhedrin. Fearing for their own positions, they accused Jesus of blasphemy and threats against the temple authority. However, the council lacked the authority to condemn him to death, and thus the issue was brought before the Roman governor, Pontius Pilatus. At the time, thanks to the feast of the Passover, Herod Antipas was also in the city of Jerusalem, and thus, with Jesus being a resident of Antipas's domains, Nazareth was part of Galilee. Pontius Pilate also sent Jesus to be interrogated by Antipas, as per the previous passage from Luke's Gospel. Antipas is also recorded by Luke to have mocked Jesus, but did nothing more substantial. Finally, with the Romans unwilling to take sides, the decision came back to the religious council of the temple. They decided to condemn Jesus to crucifixion, a common but extremely brutal practice at the time, reserved for criminals. The ones to endure this execution would lay hanged with nails upon a cross until their death, which would be excruciating and could come in a few hours or even days. And thus the messenger of love and compassion was executed through humiliation and torture by the old order of Jerusalem. The Christian tradition relies heavily on Jesus' resurrection for its theology. Our purpose for today, however, will not be to delve into this matter. Instead, what we'll try to argue is that even a secular reading of these events is greatly compelling. The key for appreciating this lies in his message and the manner of his death. There is no passage that summarizes better the message of Jesus Christ than the Sermon on the Mount, a speech that Jesus delivered in front of the crowd following him on a small hill on the shores of the Sea of Galilee. In Jesus' words, "Blessed are the pure in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." On top of this, he attempted not to change the existing religious law, but rather to add depth to them. For example, in regards to prohibiting murder, he advises not to fill oneself with anger in the first place, or in contrast to punishing adultery, he advises not to act and think with lust, or even advising someone not to take oaths, but rather keep his word anyways. These teachings come in great contrast with the two leading ideologies of the time in Judea: Jewish religious law and Roman tradition. The Jewish religious law, interpreted by the Pharisees, focuses on strictly abiding to rules. Someone can be immoral, but still, if they follow the rules, they can be regarded as pious. A person who does not commit murder but is always thinking about it is still a religious servant of God in their interpretation. A person who sticks to the religious customs in a strict manner but is inwardly corrupt is still highly respected. On the other hand, an otherwise moral person can be excluded if he does not follow the teachings of the Pharisees. On the other hand, the Roman culture emphasizes duty and loyalty to the state as the key qualities of the ideal citizen. No wonder why men like Titus Manlius Torquatus are regarded as heroes in the Roman tradition, a man who executed his son because he defied state orders. Discipline, honor, and reputation were highly regarded as they added on the social status of the individuals in the Roman society, creating a favoritism towards the aristocracy and the inherited status that comes along with it. As already presented, the word of Jesus comes into direct opposition with both of those worldviews. Humility and the true essence of the Spirit come first, the reality behind the mask that the society of the era demanded. And Jesus proved his point with actions. He spoke about what he believed and made sure to point out the faults of the system he and his contemporaries lived in, to such a degree that he even sacrificed his life. The Roman and Jewish authorities, not being able to deal with Jesus' growing following using rhetoric or even propaganda, resorted to their last weapon, violence. But little did they know that this would prove Jesus' point even more, with the brutal method of his execution, the cross being transformed into the symbol of love, humility, and hope for billions.